Welcome to the Dr. Ashley Show. I'm Dr. Ashley, and today I've got a very interesting guest with me. I really love this because I think home environment is one of the most important things we can do to help optimize our health, and a lot of us don't realize it. So today, our guest is going to help enlighten us on the topic of our home environments. It's Ryan Blazer. Ryan Blazer is the forward-thinking founder and CEO of Test My Home. This is a premier company in environmental health and building biology. He has over 25 years of experience in environmental toxicology and a background in electrical engineering. He has established himself as a leading expert in identifying and mitigating indoor environmental toxins and stressors. His personal journey of overcoming health challenges caused by these environmental exposures fuels his passion and mission to create healthier living spaces for everyone. Ryan's dedication to innovation and his deep expertise have made him a trusted advisor to thousands, positioning him as a thought leader in the field of environmental wellness and longevity. Ryan, welcome to the show. I'm really excited to have you here and to have everyone learn about the importance of their home.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, will you share with us what the turning point was for you when you realized just how dangerous certain household toxins are and how it changed your perspective on them?
Yeah, so in my 20s, I had a business and we were doing nightclubs and recording studios and churches and things. We were doing the environmental control systems, the sound, lights, video, acoustics, the air control, everything in there to stimulate the body for positive reasons, to get a positive response. Well, I moved into a home that had a bad mold problem. I wasn't aware of it at the time, but I got really sick to the point where I was in and out of the hospital a lot, couldn't keep food down, losing a lot of weight. Finally went to a functional medicine doctor after about a year of trying to track this problem down, and they did some testing and realized I have a high level of mycotoxins in my system. So moved out of the home, took about another year to get fully back to normal again. So 2 years out of my life because of this dang mold problem. And so I kind of realized, shoot, there's a dark side to the environmental work. There's things that can actually, and you hear about environment, trees and the oceans and take care of, but you don't really think about the environment of our home where we're spending, up to 90% of our lives. And so I went back to school and got some education in building biology, which is the study of how the built environment affects our body, which is fascinating. I didn't even know that was a thing at the time. And it's one of those things I feel like everyone in high school needs to learn this stuff. Like, it's so important to have this foundational knowledge of how our environment around us affects our body. And it does affect it a lot.
Yeah, that's great. How did you feel when you had that mold toxicity?
I mean, honestly, I thought I was going to die. I was so
Did you?
sick. Yeah, it was horrible. It was really bad. It's a neurotoxin. It goes into the brain. I mean, in a dark point, you can start hallucinating. You get super sick. I mean, it destroys your body. It's not a good thing.
Once you figured out that that was the problem, was it hard to treat?
No, it was just a matter of eating really clean. It was detoxing. It was
Mm-hmm.
taking the right supplements at the right time to break down the mold that was in my body, and then
Mm-hmm.
binders and things to get it out of the body. Making sure I was exercising, sweating every day was really important. Doing the sauna,
Mm-hmm.
basically all the things that we should be doing anyways to keep our body
Yeah.
healthy. You just have to do that extra.
Mm-hmm. So from a detox perspective, primarily sauna work, or was there anything else to support that?
I was
Supplementation, I guess.
Yeah, supplementation, sauna, exercising, and then being really strict about making sure I'm not putting harmful things into the body, including alcohol and things. Just being ultra
Mm-hmm.
clean so that my liver can focus 100% on getting the toxins out of my body.
Mm-hmm. So in general, with all of the work that you've done, what do you think is the biggest overlooked factor in someone's home environment that might be silently sabotaging their overall health?
So there's two things. More acutely is going to be the mold. When you have a mold problem, it's definitely affecting you on lots of different levels. But more of a lower level, but a wider spread problem is all the electronics we're using. The EMF exposure I mean, every year we come out with more and more cool technology and gadgets and things. And, we go in and test some of these homes and they have a ton of non-native artificial EMF that's affecting the body. And that's dragging people down. It's causing neurological effects, stress, anxiety, sleep problems, irritability, ADHD, a whole range of neurological issues because it's affecting the brainwaves.
Does EMF impact everybody, or are some people more sensitive to it?
Yeah, certainly some people are more sensitive to it. It's kind of like gluten. Some people are very sensitive to it. They can't even be around it. Other people can tolerate a little bit, but it gives them upset stomach. And then other people, it doesn't really affect them at all. Although I think it's maybe not good in the long term to eat a lot of that. But it's kind of like the same way with EMF.
Mhm.
Long term, there's some people that it doesn't really affect that much, but I do think that's going to help their health overall. There's a lot of compelling studies coming out about the causation to cancers and tumors from
Mhm.
the cell phones and the high voltage power lines. But yeah, there are
Mhm.
certainly people that are very sensitive around it.
So back to mold. Do you think that everyone should test their home for mold if they can? And if so, how do you recommend they test for it?
I mean, it's just like our bodies or our cars, we do regular maintenance and service. I think
Mhm.
at least yearly, you need to do a nice sweep through your house.
Yearly.
Oh yeah, just to make sure that nothing has changed. That there's no mold, there's no toxic chemicals you're using, that your air quality is great, that your water quality is good. There's no contaminants, the EMF exposure and the lighting. All those things need to be checked fairly regularly to make
Mhm.
sure that it's not affecting you.
How do you test for mold?
So for mold, if you want to know, do I have a mold problem or not? There's a really simple test that's called an ERMI, ERMI. And you take a Swiffer and you collect dust throughout your house, and they send that to the lab and they say, okay, do you have an abnormal amount of mold spores compared to background debris, or is this a normal condition? And that's going to tell you, yes, you have a mold problem. Yes, you have a lot of these dangerous spores showing up, or no, you don't. But that's really just step one. And step two is identifying the source. Okay, where is this stuff coming from? So it comes back positive, you have some toxic mold. Now, where's it coming from? And that's where we really need to get into the home, do some good visual inspections. We need to chase the water. Mold needs water to grow. So we're always looking for sources of water. Was there a roof leak? Was the toilets overflowing? Was there a leak underneath the sink that didn't get caught for a couple months and everything's soaked? Dishwashers. I mean, there's lots of different places throughout the house where we can get water intrusion, and that's where we're going to find the source of the mold.
Mhm. I have 3 kids, and one of my kids is really sensitive to all these things. So I've just gone through all of this myself. And we did a mold test, and I think we did 2 different ones. Honestly, my husband was in charge of this, but I think it was one that we did ourselves, and we were like wiping the top of the picture frames in different areas. And then there was one where someone came out to look at it. Do you have any suggestions on the best type of test? And should you have someone do it for you, or at the at-home ones, do those work?
Yeah, so we actually have a little mold course with a kit where we send you out a
Okay.
swab and you can swab like dust on the top of the picture frame. We
Mhm.
recommend swabbing your air filter if you have an HVAC system, because that's a good representation of what's in the air that you're actually breathing. Swab that, we send it to the lab, and we see if mold spores show up. But it also helps walk you through identifying where the sources potentially might be. And then at the end, it includes a 30-minute consult with me or one of the team to
Mm.
really dive in deep about, okay, what's the next step for your house? Because really the first step is saying, do we have a mold problem or not? And then step two
Mhm.
is, let's find out where this mold problem's at, because that can be the tricky part. Because a lot of times it's behind the walls, it's behind the shower, it's underneath the toilet. We don't see the mold. And so sometimes it's a trick to find it.
Yeah, and then step 3 is what to do about it. I mean, what if you find mold? Luckily, we didn't really find any, but what do you do about it?
Yeah, so step three would be physical removal. So
Uh-huh.
wherever we find the mold, let's say that it's a shower had a crack, and every time you take a shower, water's running behind there, and it's all moldy back behind there. Unfortunately, we're going to have to remove the tile, remove the shower, and remove any of
Mm.
the affected building material that is saturated with this mold. Now, if it happens to be structural on the 2x4, sometimes you can wipe it down and sand it down. But if there's water damage to the point where it's eating into the wood, sometimes we have to replace the stud. So once we physically remove all the mold, then we have to clean up all the biotoxins, the mold spores, the mycotoxins that are coming off of this stuff. And that is kind of step four. So step three is
Mm.
removing it all. Then step four is doing a really thorough deep clean. Because a lot of times it's not necessarily the mold behind the shower that's making you sick. It's the mycotoxins coming off of the mold that's traveling
Mhm.
through the air. Think about if someone was smoking a cigarette in the bathroom. That cigarette smoke's going to proliferate through the house rather quickly. Mold spores and mycotoxins do the same thing. So we could have an isolated event in the bathroom, But we have these mycotoxins that are now spread out throughout the house from the last 6 months of this putting off these toxic chemicals. And so the deep clean, and that's one step that a lot of people forget about or overlook, is that deep cleaning when you're all done cleaning up the mold.
What a lot of work.
It is kind of a pain in the butt. Mold is not fun.
Yeah. Do you have a story you can share of someone who reached out to you? They were pretty sick. You found it was mold, and walk us through what you did and what happened.
Yeah, I had this couple that called me up one time, and I could tell they were both agitated and irritable, and they were not happy. They were sitting at opposite ends of the couch, and like, we think we have a problem. I can smell it. She can't. We don't know, blah, blah, blah. So we go back and forth. We end up finding the mold in the crawl space. The whole crawl space was infested with mold. It was coming up into their house. For years, they were breathing this stuff in. So they ended up moving out of the house, getting everything fixed, helped them through the whole process. And then randomly, like 8 months later, after it was all done, they called me up and they're like, you know what, we just want to tell you that you saved our marriage. They were so irritable because of it. They were on the brink of getting divorced. And once they fixed the mold, everything got handled, they moved back in, a lot of their irritability went away, and they fell back in love with each other. But the funny thing is about this story, and I don't know if it's necessarily funny, but the people that they bought the house from was out of a divorce. And those people, once they moved out of the house, actually ended up getting back together and remarrying also.
No way.
It was the house itself that was bothering them, making them so sick and irritable they just couldn't stand each other.
So the moral of the story is, if you're angry with your spouse or partner, get your house checked for mold first.
It could be mold. Yeah, they may not be as bad as you think they are.
That's right. Wow. So then, for those individuals who were living in that mold infested environment, did they have to treat themselves for the mold too by going through a protocol?
Yep. No, exactly. That's the thing is, once you get it out of the house, now you got to get it out of the body. And so a good functional medicine doctor, there's lots of different protocols out there depending on what you do. But like I talked about in the beginning, it's really all about really cleaning your diet up and giving your liver the best chance it has to detoxify your own body. It does a good job of that.
Yeah. The liver does do a good job, especially when we eat clean, we drink water. The body and the liver works the way that it's supposed to, and it's meant to detox. So
yeah, man, it's kind of like with weight loss, which if you're drinking alcohol all the time or using there's a lot of chemicals around, your body's first main thing is to get rid of toxins. And so it's not going to focus on burning fat or detoxifying the body when it has all these toxins in the blood that it's got to get rid of. So it's got to do that first. So that's really the first step, is really having a clean diet, clean environment helps in so many different ways.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Hey, really quickly, if you're interested in hydrating yourself optimally and want to do it in an efficient and effective way, I created an Electrolyte Plus mix just for that. It's called Dr. Ashley's Electrolyte Plus. Creative, I know. And it's crafted with essential electrolytes, vitamins, and minerals for maximum absorption. With patented forms of zinc and vitamin C, it supports immune and adrenal function. Plus, chromium picolinate regulates healthy blood sugar levels while helping to curb those cravings. Say goodbye to headaches and fatigue. Visit drashleywellness.com and use code Ashley10 for 10% off your first purchase or 20% off your first subscription order with free shipping. Plus, enjoy 30-day money-back guarantee. Now, back to the episode.
So then, around EMFs, will you explain a little bit more about what EMFs are if someone's not familiar with it? And then I'd love to hear, we do a few tactics. We have these special things we put on our cell phones or our kids' iPads. I don't know if they work, but it makes me feel more comfortable. So will you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so EMF stands for electromagnetic fields or frequencies, and it's basically the energy that comes off of either things that are plugged into the electrical outlets, so the lights, the fans, the TVs, the computers, but it's also the wireless technology, so Bluetooth or the Bluetooth headphones, the Wi-Fi, our cell phones, satellites, AM, FM radio station. All these things send frequencies over the airwaves to these devices. The problem is our body is also a frequency being. Our brain, our heart, our nervous system, even our cells at a cellular level are using a little electrical signals to control our body. And so when we overlay these artificial frequencies onto our own natural frequencies, it causes a lot of interference in the body. And that interference leads to a whole range of health issues. A lot of them neurological with the brain, because that's where the main computer processors for us. But also in our nervous system, in our body, in our cells, they don't know when to release waste and take in nutrients and do this or do that, because there's all this background interference from these electromagnetic frequencies. So it's really good to try to limit either our time around these devices by setting limits. Like say, okay, around at dinner time, we're going to turn phones on airplane mode, and we're going to be more present. Or at night, we're sleeping, so no reason to really have the phones on. Some circumstances you might need it, but for the most part, we can turn our phones off or put them on airplane mode. And for that third of our life that we're sleeping, we can get away from the EMF exposure or distance ourselves from them. I'm on the podcast right now. I don't need to have the phone up next to my head. It's over sitting across the room on the other side of the desk. So there's ways that we can reduce exposure without having to live in a cave, because there's no way we're going to totally get away from EMF in the modern world. But there's a lot of ways that we can reduce the exposure, and that goes a long ways.
Yeah. I even have, my husband got me a shirt that protects from EMF that I generally wear when I fly, because I do feel when I'm in airports, I don't know, it gives me headaches and I feel strange.
Yeah. Well, a lot of, I believe, jet lag is the unhealthy environment in the airplane. There's so much EMF. We're in this aluminum tube with everyone's got their devices out. There's a lot of EMF in the airplane. Yeah. So the shirt definitely helps. It will reflect away. So they have pants, shirts, underwear, hats. You can wear all this stuff and it will help reflect that energy away. Unfortunately, the stickers and things that you're talking about, we haven't found any that actually work. That if you think about it, if they were actually working to block the EMF, then the phones wouldn't work themselves. You wouldn't be able to make that call. So as long as that signal is reaching the cell tower and the cell tower is reaching back, there's still EMF traveling. And it's still affecting. If it were to change it in any or reduce it, you wouldn't be able to make the call. I wish there was a easy, quick fix like that. That would make it.
I figured something like that.
Yeah.
What about grounding? Is grounding helpful when it comes to letting the body just recalibrate, getting outside, feeling your bare feet on the ground?
That's a really good thing you can do for your body. Yeah, because we build up these electrons in our body, and these charged electrons need a place to go. And almost all the time, we're not grounded. We're either walking on rubber shoes, or we're in a car with rubber tires, or we're in our house with the wooden floor. And very few times are we ever physically touching the earth. But when we do that, the earth has a neutralizing effect with the electrons in our body. And there's a lot of studies out there actually showing the benefits of grounding. But yeah, that's a huge thing that people can do. I'm in Idaho. It's really cold here right now, so we don't get to ground as much. But in the summer, I always try to walk around with my shoes off outside, just go outside on the lawn, take some phone calls, and just be connected to the earth is a huge thing.
Yeah, I agree. My kids are out there, not right now because it's freezing here as well, but they're running around without shoes. And I always think I should tell them to put their shoes on, but I refrain because I figure they're doing that for a reason.
Yeah. Now, there's a caveat to that, though, is that if you're using harsh chemicals on your lawn for weed killers, you can absorb that up to your feet. So you want to make sure that where you're walking doesn't have chemicals on it.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So how do people test for EMF in their house?
So really just getting a meter. So there's a meter called a tri-field meter. We also have an EMF course as well that includes the meter and some worksheets, and then a bunch of videos to show you how to go through your whole house and do the testing yourself. But really, if you're interested with EMF, is getting a meter and just playing around with them. Because these frequencies are invisible. We can't hear them, we can't see them, smell them. But with the meter, then we can walk around and say, oh, wow, my laptop is putting off this much. But as I slowly walk away from it, the level starts to go down. So where I'm 20 feet away from it, it's no longer really affecting me. Or the washing machine, when it's on, it's really high. So that you can go around to your house and identify all these sources of the EMF and see how bad it actually is affecting you.
And then let's say you do find those high areas. What do you do about that? I mean, you have to still use your washer, or do you just not go near it when it's on?
Yeah, a lot of it's the proximity part. So where we come into problems when I'm doing inspections of people's homes is, let's say they have their washer and dryer, but right on the other side is where their baby's crib is. And they find that the baby won't sleep very good when they're running the load of laundry. Why is that? Well, because you have this motor putting off this high magnetic field that's pulsating 6, 7, 8 feet away from it. Baby's crib's right on the other side, or a fridge, or the power panel, whatever it might be. So simply moving the crib to the other side of the room or changing the proximity is the fix for that. So it's really about distancing ourselves from these devices when possible.
Got it. Yeah, at night we also turn our Wi-Fi off. Like we have it on an automatic switch, 10:30, it's done. So
That's
we
perfect.
give our bodies hopefully a break through the night. And phones on airplane mode, we do that too.
Yep. So those are all really good options. So we go one step further and we actually turn the circuits off to our bedrooms as well.
Oh, really?
Yep. So then, because you have that energy field on the wires that are going around the room. So when you're laying in
Mm-hmm.
bed and your head's next to the wall, you're probably about 6 inches from that electrical wiring that's connecting the outlets. That's radiating out into the room several feet. So we go to the panel. Oh, our old house, we would shut it off in the circuits. The house we live in now, we have a remote control switch. So it makes it more convenient. So we just,
That's
when we're done
fancy.
for the night, we hit the button, powers down all the bedrooms. Sleep in a
Interesting.
0 EMF field. Yeah, you sleep a lot better. You
That's
remember your dreams a lot more.
Oh, I could see that.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the biggest overlooked factor in someone's home that, is it mold? Is that the biggest area that we need to focus on?
So I think the biggest overlooked thing is that people aren't getting enough fresh air into their house, especially if you live in a really cold or really hot climate. It's where I was always raised, keep the door closed, don't let the heat out, you're wasting energy. Well, what happens when we do that is we create these little airtight boxes that we live in. If you got 4 or 5 people in your family and some pets and everyone's breathing out CO2 and breathing in oxygen, pretty soon that CO2 level gets higher and higher and higher, because the only time that we're really getting fresh air in is if someone opens a door or a window to get in and out. Now there's newer homes and more custom homes. They have ERV and HRV, which is a fresh air ventilation system, which brings fresh air into the house, but not everybody has that. In fact, I would say 10 to 5% of the homes have a fresh air ventilation system. The rest of them are just these enclosed, closed loop boxes that are building up the CO2. And then if we have a mold problem, that's building up in the home. And then if we have chemicals that we're using, we have teenage daughter running through the house with the hairspray and the cologne and the perfumes, and all that stuff is building up in the home. And then we have off-gassing. Pretty soon we have this pretty toxic soup in our house. And the way that you can tell that is go outside when you're done listening to this and feel how fresh the air is. Unless you live in downtown pollution or if it's fire season, but right now is a good time to go outside and feel how fresh the air is, and then walk inside your house. And if you can tell a difference in the air between your inside and your outside, you have some stale air and you need to get fresh air. If the air feels heavy or muggy or musty, you'll know the difference if you're thinking about it. Oh, wow, yeah, the air inside the house is a lot different than the air outside. It's because we're not getting that fresh air in.
So what do you do about that?
So, opening up the windows and doors, 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes at night, flushing that out, even if it's really cold, even if it's really hot. Now, the only time I would recommend not doing that is if you live in a very humid climate. If you're on the beach in Florida and it's super humid, we'd have to run the air through a dehumidifier first. So there's some things we can do, but it makes it more challenging. Or if it's really polluted out, if you're downtown LA and you can see the smog and it's pretty nasty, or, here in Idaho, we get fires towards the end of summer and it can get really smoky. And so in those situations, you want to keep things closed up and use air filtration. But for the rest of the time, man, if it's nice outside and clear day, get those windows and doors open and flush out your home a couple times a day.
Do you recommend using air filters?
I do. So air filters won't take care of the freshness of the air, but what they will do is pull the particles out of the air. So the dead skin cells, the mold, the pollen, insect parts, insect feces, broken down foams, fibers, microplastics. These are the things that are accumulating in our dust, that if we have air filtration running, it's going to capture that in the filter instead of capturing it in our lungs. So it's really important to have air filters.
Wow. Yeah, we actually just implemented some of those too. I don't know if I can feel a difference, but I'm thinking it must be there.
Yeah. Which ones did you guys implement?
I'm thinking that it's Air Doctor.
Okay. Yeah.
That brand comes to mind. Do you have any that you suggest?
So I personally like Jasper. It's more of a commercial grade unit that they designed for homes. It's quieter. It looks really sleek. It's nice and sleek looking round. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't put off any EMF, and it's lifetime warranty. It
Mm-hmm.
moves a lot of air. It's just, I got one here in the office. You can't even hear it right now. It's running. Doesn't
Mm-mm.
affect the call. I got 2 in my bedroom. I got 3 out in the main room, and I have 1 in each of the kids' rooms. So for me, having a good commercial grade air filter in all the rooms of my house is
Mm-hmm.
important to me.
Okay, great. So we talked about mold and EMF and air. What else is there? Water?
Water, yes. Unfortunately, the water in our country is just getting worse and worse because of the microplastics and because of the forever chemicals and because of the pharmaceuticals in the water that's being reclaimed. I would not drink out of the tap anywhere, really. I mean,
You
they're
wouldn't?
very, very, maybe way up in the mountains if you got a nice cistern well or something, but for the most part, the water that's coming out of the tap is not good. We're going to accumulate a lot of biotoxins and contaminants. So always want to make sure we're filtering our water, either reverse osmosis, or they have really nice whole home filtration systems you can use. But really the key is get your water tested, see what you have, and then build a water filtration system that's based on the contaminants that you have in your water.
So when you travel, what do you do?
So, I'll go to the Whole Foods and just buy a case of the bottled water there, out of the glass, and, the mountain spring water, and just drink that and use that for cooking or brushing teeth.
Even for brushing your teeth?
Try to, yeah, if we can.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mountain Valley, I think that's that brand in the green glass waters.
Yep, that's the one.
That's green glass water bottles. Yes, I love that
Yep.
one as
Yep.
well.
Yep.
Okay, so water filter. Is there a statistic that just keeps you up at night that's about home toxins that blows your mind?
They say on a world level, 1 in 4 deaths can be attributed to environmental toxicity. To me, that's a crazy number that we could do a lot of work on. Also a number that we spend over 90% of our lives indoors. And that was actually a study that was pre-COVID. So I would assume now for people working at home, that number is probably higher. That's pretty scary. We're only really getting out less than 10% of the time we're spending outside. Another crazy one that recently is that now we are spending more of our waking hours looking into a screen than we are looking out into reality. So either looking at a phone, looking at a TV, looking at a computer, we're spending more time doing that than we are looking out into the real world. And that number's only growing and growing. That's a crazy one to me.
So how does that impact us?
As far as the EMF exposure, we're getting a ton of that because a lot of these screens are all connected wirelessly. So we're getting this constant EMF bombardment, but also like with the social media and the content and the things that that's doing to our brain, the dopamine addiction with a lot of, like TikTok and the YouTube shorts and all these things, they're so addictive for people. And I even get caught up in it sometimes, start scrolling. All of a sudden it's been like 20 minutes. Like, man, what am I doing? This is crazy,
I know.
And so, I mean, there's that aspect to it. And then, of course, we just have any information we need at the tips of our fingertips, which is scary from, I got a couple teenage kids, and it's crazy to think the things that they can just put in their search bar and pull up in an instant.
Yeah. And then we've got the blue light that's coming in at high levels.
The blue light's coming in and it's affecting our circadian rhythm. And so once the sun goes down, the lights in our house should be dimmed, and they should be in the yellow, orange, and red spectrum. We don't want any of that blue light because that tells our body that, oh, wait, it's daytime. We should be suppressing melatonin and not getting ready for sleep. And then you don't sleep very good. Then you wake up the next day and then you need your coffee, and then it's just this cycle.
Yeah. Okay, so we live in a toxic pool, and all this can be really overwhelming. So if we were to break this down into maybe 3 or 4 first steps, what should people do so we can reduce the overwhelm?
Yeah, you bet. So the one thing that I would do is put a really strict no shoes policy in your house. It's crazy what we walk through out there, filling up your car with gas and the oil and the gas, and then we go into the bathroom and there's E. coli and harsh cleaners, and you go to the park and the pesticides and everything. We track all that stuff into our house, especially if you have little ones that are crawling around on the floor. I would be very, very strict about leave those outdoor shoes at the door. Do not track that into the house. The homes that we test that have a strict shoe policy always test way better than the ones that don't. We touched on this a little bit with the fresh air. Open up your windows and get some fresh air in your house. That's a really huge one, an easy, free one you can do. turning off your electronics when you're not using them, and set some boundaries. Like I said about dinner time or past a certain point at night, or read the kids the books out of a real book instead of using the iPad, and take that as a good opportunity to just put your phone in the other room and turn it off for the rest of the night, and take a little time away from the electronics, turn things off. Another one is going through your kitchen and getting rid of all the plastics that touch food. Microplastics are a big deal, and that affects our body in a way. Also for weight loss, I mean, if you got all these things, plastics in your body, it's messing up your hormones. So the plastic Tupperware, the plastic cutting boards, the plastic plate, all that stuff, when it heats up especially, is getting into the food, and then we're ingesting that stuff. Same thing I would say with the aluminum in the kitchen. Make sure that, if you want to line the bottom of your oven and things, that's fine, but don't have it actually touching the food. Definitely don't cook your food in aluminum. I remember growing up, they used to just wrap the potatoes up in aluminum foil and throw it in the grill. And you don't want to do that, because you're releasing a lot of these chemicals and aluminum into the food that we're eating. Those are some really quick, easy tips that you could do.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I used to, not even that, probably up until 9 months ago, used to always cook bacon on an aluminum covered baking tray. Like, I'd cover it with aluminum foil because it made the cleanup easier.
Yep.
And then I was tested myself for heavy metals, and aluminum was high, if you can imagine that.
Yes. Yep.
That's
And
very
it's hard
sad.
to get it out of the body. The detox,
I know.
it's a pain. So it's much easier to keep it out of the body than it is to get it out of the body.
Yeah, it really is. So what would you say are the primary changes you made in your own life as you've been going through this? Like, what are, I guess, probably the tips that you just gave us, but it sounds like not drinking tap water is like a non-negotiable for you. What else really kind of revolutionized your life?
I think the biggest thing was my thought process about how I look at the things around me. The decisions that I make, the small decisions every day, they're either going to move the needle to take away life and take away my health, or they're going to move the needle the other way to add health and vibrance to my life, either through my brain or my body or how I feel. All these decisions, what the food I put on my mouth, the chemicals I put on my body, or the chemicals around me, the air that I breathe in, the water that I'm breathing, all these things make a huge impact on my life for either good or bad. And when I look at it and break it down to those little things, it helps me to make better decisions throughout the day.
Yeah. So, Ryan, where can people learn more so that they could potentially get a test, look for mold, look at EMFs if they're interested in revolutionizing their own home environment?
Yeah, so on Instagram, at Test My Home, we're trying to put out content regularly that's easy, helpful tips. You can follow along and learn as much as you can. We've got a ton of good content on there. On our website, testmyhome.com, we do Zoom consultations with people. We work with people around the world. We have remote testing kits. We've talked about the mold one and the EMF one. We also have a water one, and then we have a full comprehensive one that covers everything, where we ship you out the testing equipment, the meters, the forms, and then we have a really good training course that we put you through that's actually pretty easy. It's not too long. You can do it in a weekend and go through and test your own home. Or if you want us to do it for you, we can fly out to wherever you're at with the team and go through your house from top to bottom, fully optimize your house, create a true healing sanctuary. So, if you're dealing with cancer, or you're having a long-term chronic illness, it just doesn't seem to be going away, and you haven't addressed the environment, that's really a big lever you can pull to make some big changes. Or if you're the kind of person that's a little bit proactive and doesn't want to get into these situations, do this stuff ahead of time. Because a lot of the situations I go into, unfortunately, they're already sick and they've been in their home for 10, 15 years. And if they would have figured this stuff out in the beginning, they might not have cancer now. They might not have this chronic illness or this sickness, or there's so many things just cognitively that we can improve by cleaning up the environment.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've seen a big difference for my son, who's pretty sensitive, going through these changes. And for me, it's just been one step at a time. We're like, okay, we're going to focus on the air now. Now we're going to focus on clothing and cotton. We didn't talk about that, but what we wear on our body is also important. So I think if we can, maybe for me, I have a photographic mind. If I have a list there and I just take one step at a time, doesn't have to be fast. Then overall, you create big changes with one step at a time. So that
It
can be
is.
helpful.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's just like fitness or nutrition or any of that. You can always take it to another level. There's always people going to the extreme. We meet
Yeah.
you where you're at. We do the baby steps, the small steps like you're talking about, and just make these small changes. Then over time, it starts to make a big difference.
Yeah, probably, especially in these areas with natural disasters. I'm in Asheville, North Carolina. I'm still afraid to drink the tap water here because I can only imagine it's been chlorinated to a really high degree, and everything that's flown through the rivers lately. I don't know. It just makes me uncomfortable. And now in LA, I imagine the water quality, the air. I think it's a big deal for these areas.
Yeah, and the smoke coming off of the burned homes and buildings and cars is exponentially more toxic and carcinogenic than the trees that are burning. I mean, when the forest is burning, it's the ashes and the things from trees
That's
that
right.
we don't want to breathe that in. That's still harmful. But when we're burning paints and chemicals and plastics and rubber tires and all the things that are in homes, asbestos and lead in the paint from all of this stuff is getting into the air, and we're breathing the stuff in. You got to be really careful in these environments. And we've put some posts and some things talking about this and being really careful about making sure you have a mask on and really good air filtration if you're affected by the smoke from those fires.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Ryan. And will you share your website once more with us?
You bet. It's testmyhome.com.
Oh, awesome. That's an easy one.
Yes.
Thanks for coming on the show, Ryan.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, you guys, I hope that you really enjoyed this episode. I sure learned a lot. I hope that you did too. I hope it's not overwhelming, but that you got some action steps you can actually take away to help improve your home environment. I personally, with my family, we've been working on this with our home. We've recently got some air filters, focusing on water quality, some water filters. If you guys have any questions or comments or feedback and you're watching this on YouTube, please drop your comments in the comment section below. If you are listening to this on a podcast platform, please leave a review, share your feedback. I listen and read it all. So please do so. All right, you guys, remember, you've got to step up to make the change. Lead with your heart, train your mind, and do not negotiate with your body. I'll see you next time.